Hello, my name's Ian J. Franks. Welcome to episode 2 of Art Tightrope Walking, where we're discussing how to stay safe with distributed release trains. This is the second in a series of videos resulting from a collaboration between Amplify Results Consulting and RenTouch. Art Tightrope Walking with me, Ian J. Franks, resulting from a collaboration between Amplify Results Consulting and RenTouch. In this episode, we're talking about preparation for the PI planning event. It's not always easy for the release train engineer to be able to coach or mentor the Scrum Masters, product owners, product managers, etc. When they're in a distributed environment. So it's really important that some time is taken before the PI planning event for this group to come together and be briefed on what's expected of them, what their role is, and make sure everybody's aligned so that the event runs as smoothly as possible. I always like to make sure that I hold a briefing session with each of these groups individually and explain exactly what's expected, what's needed, and go over a number of things with them. So first off, briefing with the Scrum Masters. In this session, I would always want to cover the PI planning event and logistics, the agenda itself, who needs to be where and when, make sure that the Scrum Masters are with their teams, that we understand who's travelled where to make sure that product owners are going to be with their teams, and the necessary product management and architecture support are also aligned. Additionally, I want to talk about how we're going to run the distributed event. I'd recommend that we use some kind of technologies to support us. RenTouch's PI planning app is an excellent choice. Talk about the draft and the final plan reviews, the timing of the event's Scrum of Scrums, and of course the role of the Scrum Master during the PI planning event itself. So there's a number of things that we need to cover. So firstly, I want to make sure that the Scrum Masters are very clear on the approach to PI planning, that we're going to be taking features highest priority first, that they should be planning and encouraging their teams to plan one feature at a time before they pull the next items. All of these things that help make sure that we run a smooth event. Secondly, I'd want to talk about the PI planning app and how we've set it up, right down to simple things like the colours we're using to represent the different objects. Make sure the Scrum Masters are familiar with it, make sure that their teams have access to it, make sure that it's either set up on somebody's PC or if they're using the web version, they know exactly how to access it and that the technology is all working for them. I also like to take time to discuss with the Scrum Masters and the teams the order in which we're going to do presentations, the draft and final plan reviews. It's fine when you've got people in one room to just say, right, who wants to go next? But when you've got distributed teams dotted around the world, that can rapidly become something that loses you a lot of time or causes you issues in trying to progress. So I tend to agree beforehand with the Scrum Masters which order the teams are going to present in and exactly how we're going to present, what technology we're going to use, if we're going to use any technology, how are we going to set it up? Are we going to run it from one PC? Are we going to keep swapping between different PCs? Again, I recommend that you use one PC. If you're using some technology, such as RenTouch's PI planning app, where you can just flick through each team's board and run both the draft and final presentations from one place. To keep the PI planning event itself on track, I'll spend some time talking about the Scrum of Scrums as well with the Scrum Masters. I'll make sure they're familiar with the checklist. Make sure that that's part of a handout that goes to them and the team on the day, so they know at what stage they should be getting to at each of the Scrum of Scrums points, just to help keep everybody moving at the same sort of speed and make sure that we remain aligned. And, just as importantly, to flag any issues if we're suffering or falling behind anywhere that we can then address. Finally, I like to talk to the Scrum Masters about their role in the event itself, making sure that they understand what they're there to try and do, make sure that the teams are not getting caught up into getting into detailed planning or iteration planning, that they understand they need to work at a higher level, make sure they are working with the business owners and the product management team to have priorities documented and scored as we move on through the event, and generally understand exactly how they work alongside the release train engineer to ensure that we run smoothly and stay on track. Now let's think about the architects, the business owners and the product management team. I like to have a briefing with these guys as well, just to make sure that they understand their role and how we need them to support the PI planning event. It's going to be very important that they're accessible and available to the teams. So we'll talk in a future episode about travel planning, but that should be something that's discussed at this stage as well, to make sure that there are the right resources available to different teams in different locations. Additionally, it's going to be key that this group gets involved with the teams, particularly in the second round of planning, when they need to start applying business value to the team's objectives. Now this is going to be a bit of a challenge if everybody's in one location, but we need to talk about how we make that work. Now previously I've done that where I always like to make sure some architects and product managers are in each of the locations, and therefore they can collaborate between them to make sure that they're using a common view in terms of what the objectives are and what the scoring should be, and that they're getting engaged with the teams in their local area. Finally, it also makes sense to make this group aware of what the logistics are at this stage as well. Hopefully at this point you've got yourself a detailed agenda with timings so they understand exactly what's happening. They understand where they need to be and how they can best assist and support the teams, and obviously how they can support the executive briefings at the beginning of the day as well. Talking of the executive briefing, the other group to make sure you engage with is the executives themselves. You're going to be looking to these folks to give your business context and your overviews at the start of your PI planning event. With a distributed PI planning event, I found quite often that the time for this gets a little bit more condensed than perhaps we would advise, but it can still be done and still be worked reasonably as long as you take some time with the executives to help them understand exactly what it is that we need to get across in each of the messages in each of those presentations. I recommend having some time with the executives to help them tailor their message, to help them focus on the messages that need to be delivered in what's probably a slightly shorter time span than we would normally advocate for each of the business context sessions. Let them really understand how to uplift the team, get the key messages across about what the focus is, what the vision is, and what the roadmap is in these upcoming months, so that the team are very clear and the messages are very focused, because it's very easy for people to turn off when the event is much more distributed. So, in summary, my top tip is to make sure that you take some time to brief all the key players that are going to support and help make your PI planning event a success. And if your budget can stand it, do your utmost to try and make sure that those people are spread around across the different locations, because that'll provide better visibility, better support, better engagement, and those groups themselves can work out a way that we can have them synchronize and remain aligned throughout the event so they're delivering common messages. So that's just some thoughts of things that have helped planning and alignment from my past. I'm sure you've got other ideas, or maybe you've tried some other things. We welcome hearing from you, so do let us know if you've got other ideas. Thanks very much for watching. We'll talk to you again soon.